Deep in the silent darkness of space, a massive, rust-covered warship floated without power. It had been drifting for centuries, forgotten by time, lost in the endless void. To most, it was nothing but a piece of junk, a useless relic of an ancient war. But to those who truly understood history, this was no ordinary wreck. This was a Terran warship, a relic from a time when humans ruled the stars with unmatched power. And now, it had been found. A group of alien scavengers, known as the Varak, had been traveling through the sector in search of old wreckage to salvage. Their scanners picked up the signal of the floating ship, and from what they could see, it was abandoned. No life signs, no active defenses, no power, just a dead husk waiting to be stripped apart. Their leader, Krennic, was cautious but greedy. Human technology, even ancient, was valuable. If they could take apart this ship, they could sell its parts for a fortune. With that thought in mind, they moved in, their small scavenger vessels latching onto the massive warship like parasites on a dying beast. As they stepped onto the ship, the silence inside was unsettling. The walls were covered in rust, cables hung from the ceiling like the veins of a long-dead creature, and the air was heavy with the scent of age. The ship's control panels were dark, its weapons offline. The Varak assumed that whatever power source had once fueled this beast was long gone. Confident that there was no danger, they split up, moving through the corridors to search for anything valuable. One of them, a young scavenger named Vrel, entered what looked like an old command room. Dust covered everything, and the chairs were empty, as if the crew had left in a hurry. His eyes landed on a control panel covered in strange human markings. Without thinking, he brushed off the dust and pressed a few buttons, hoping to activate something useful. That was his mistake. The moment his claws touched the console, the entire ship groaned, as if waking from a deep sleep. The rusted walls trembled, lights flickered, and a low hum filled the air. The scavengers froze as a deep, mechanical voice echoed through the halls, speaking in an ancient human language. None of them understood the words, but they all understood one thing: something had changed. The ship, which had been lifeless moments ago, was waking up. Panic spread among the Varak as the ship's systems came back online one by one. The rust that covered the walls started breaking away, revealing smooth black metal underneath. The ship's core, which they had believed to be dead, was now radiating power. Red warning lights flashed everywhere, and the same mechanical voice continued speaking, now faster, as if it was issuing a countdown. The scavengers had no idea what they had triggered, but they knew it was bad. Very bad. Krennic shouted for his team to retreat, but it was already too late. The ship's exterior, once covered in rust, was now gleaming, as if the entire structure had been hidden beneath a self-repairing layer. Outside, alien ships patrolling the sector noticed the sudden energy spike. A distress signal was sent out. The signal carried a name that had not been spoken in centuries, a name that sent chills through every alien empire that received it. It was the name of the warship. And according to the ship's records, it had been built not as a regular battleship, but as a doomsday device, a last resort weapon designed to destroy entire fleets. And now, after centuries of silence, it was online again. The scavengers desperately tried to escape, but the ship's security systems activated, trapping them inside. Doors slammed shut, sealing every corridor, and defense turrets unfolded from the walls, their targeting systems scanning the intruders. Vril, who had triggered the awakening, stood frozen in horror as a holographic display appeared before him. It showed a countdown 30 seconds. He didn't know what would happen when it reached 0, but he knew it wouldn't be good. Across the galaxy, alarms blared in alien command centers as leaders received the same terrifying message: Terran doomsday warship detected. Status: reactivating. Fear spread like wildfire. The war with humanity had ended centuries ago, but everyone remembered the stories. The humans had been brutal, unstoppable warriors who built weapons beyond imagination. If one of their warships had returned, then something terrible was about to happen. Back inside the ship, the countdown reached 10 seconds. The scavengers pounded on the doors, screaming, trying to override the controls, but nothing worked. The ship had already made its decision. With a final beep, the countdown hit 0. The entire warship trembled, energy surging through its veins like blood in a waking beast. The Varric didn't have time to react before a surge of electricity ran through the corridors, eliminating anything that was not human. Outside, alien ships moved in, preparing to attack, but it was pointless. The warship, now fully restored, released a pulse of energy that spread out in all directions, knocking out the systems of anything nearby. Ships powered down, weapons failed, and communication channels were flooded with one final message, broadcasted in a language that had not been heard in generations: humanity's wrath has returned. The galaxy would never be the same again. The old warship floated in deep space, silent and lifeless, its metal hull covered in centuries of rust and ice. It had been forgotten, lost, after a great war that no one spoke about anymore. To the galaxy, humanity was a story from the past defeated, vanished, and no longer a threat. But the Varric scavengers, searching for anything valuable, didn't care about old legends. All they saw was a massive, abandoned Terran warship, possibly filled with ancient human technology. Their leader, Krennic, knew that even broken human weapons sold for a fortune. If they could take control of this wreck, they could sell its systems to the highest bidder. The crew attached their small ships to the warship's surface and cut through the outer layer, stepping inside with weapons drawn. The halls were dark and quiet, covered in dust and ice, as if time had stopped the day this ship was abandoned. The scavengers moved carefully, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. Their scanners picked up no signs of life, no security systems, nothing but silence. It seemed like an easy job. Krennic felt relieved. He had heard the old stories about Terran warships, stories about ships that never truly died, ships that waited, watching, preparing to fight again. But this one? This was just a rusted relic, a worthless piece of junk floating in space. He ordered his crew to start searching for anything useful: weapons, energy cores, navigation data. They split up, moving deeper into the ship. One of the scavengers, Vreel, found himself in a large chamber filled with strange human machines. The room felt different, untouched by time, as if something was protecting it. In the center stood a massive console, covered in symbols and buttons that made no sense to him. Curiosity got the better of him, and he placed his hand on the surface. The moment his skin made contact, the ship woke up. The entire structure trembled. Lights flickered, and a deep, mechanical voice echoed through the halls, speaking in an ancient human language. The rust on the walls cracked, revealing smooth black metal underneath. The Varric scavengers froze as the ship's dead systems suddenly came back to life. Emergency sirens blared, warning signals flashed on every screen, and deep within the ship, something moved. Krennic's communicator crackled with frantic voices as his crew reported the same thing: the ship was repairing itself. Panels lifted, revealing weapons hidden beneath the floor. Old, damaged wires reconnected, and a pulsing red glow filled the corridors. This was no abandoned wreck. This was a sleeping beast, and they had just woken it up. Outside, alien fleets across the galaxy picked up the ship's activation signal. The name of the warship appeared in ancient human records, a name spoken only in fear. It had been built as a doomsday weapon, a final creation of humanity before they disappeared. Every major empire knew what this meant. If this ship was truly online again, then something worse was coming. Panic spread across the Galactic Council. Some wanted to destroy it before it could fully awaken. Others wanted to control it, to harness its power for themselves. Armies were mobilized, warships prepared. Every faction knew one thing: whatever was inside this ship was not meant to be found. Back inside, the scavengers ran through the halls, searching for a way out. The doors slammed shut one by one, trapping them inside. Krennic shouted commands, but nothing worked. The ship was sealing itself, locking down every exit. A new voice joined the ship's mechanical warnings, a calm, cold human voice. It spoke in the common language of the galaxy, and its words sent chills through the scavengers' bones. Unauthorized lifeforms detected. Security protocol activated. The scavengers barely had time to react before the ship's defense systems came online. Walls shifted, revealing hidden turrets that powered up instantly. The first shots fired, cutting down the nearest scavengers before they could even scream. Krennic ducked behind a metal crate, his heart pounding. They had stepped into a trap set centuries ago. This warship was never abandoned. It had been waiting, hiding, pretending to be dead until the right moment came. And now, the moment had arrived. Vreel, still near the control room, stared in horror as the console in front of him displayed something new. A single command written in an old human dialect translated itself in glowing red letters. Final weapon status, 80% activated. He didn't understand everything, but he knew enough. The ship wasn't just waking up, it was preparing to fight. And if the process completed, there would be no stopping it. The galaxy had thought humanity was gone forever. But deep in the heart of this warship, something had survived. Something powerful. Something dangerous. A sudden explosion rocked the ship as an external attack hit the hull. The alien fleets had arrived, and they were not taking any chances. A barrage of energy blasts rained down on the warship, trying to destroy it before it could fully awaken. Krennic felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the ship could still be stopped. Maybe it wasn't too late. But then the ship fought back. Without warning, the warship's ancient weapons systems came online. Gigantic cannons extended from its surface, glowing with energy that had not been seen in centuries. The ship's AI scanned the attacking forces, identifying them as hostile, and fired. The first shot was all it took. A massive beam of energy sliced through the nearest enemy ship, destroying it instantly. The other alien warships scrambled to escape, but it was useless. The Terran warship had fully awakened. Inside, Krennic and his remaining crew could only watch as the ship's systems continued their final phase. The mechanical voice spoke one last time, this time in a tone filled with something almost like anger. Final weapon status, 100% activated. Humanity's wrath has returned. Krennic understood, too late, that the galaxy had made a mistake. They had believed humanity was gone. They had thought the Terran warships were just old relics. But the truth was far worse. Humanity had never truly disappeared. They had left something behind. And now, after centuries of silence, their most dangerous secret was awake once more. The galaxy was in chaos. The old Terran warship had awakened, sending a signal across the stars, one that had not been heard in centuries. The message was simple but terrifying. No one knew what it truly meant, but every empire, every race, every ruler in the galaxy felt the same thing: fear. The humans had been wiped out long ago, erased from existence after a brutal war. Their ships had been destroyed, their worlds turned to dust, and their armies had vanished. But now, one of their deadliest warships had reactivated itself, and there was only one possible explanation. A human was still alive. The search began immediately. Armies were mobilized, spies were deployed, and bounty hunters were sent to every corner of the galaxy. Every ruler wanted the same thing: to find the last human before anyone else did. Some wanted to capture him, to force him to shut down the ship before it was too late. Others wanted to kill him, to erase the last trace of a species that had once brought the galaxy to its knees. But there were whispers, quiet rumors in the darkest places of space, saying that not everyone wanted him dead. There were those who believed that if the last human was found and awakened the ship's full power, he could bring back the lost empire of mankind. And there were those who feared exactly that. On a distant, forgotten planet, in the ruins of an old mining colony, an old man sat in the shadows of a dying sun. His face was lined with age, his hands rough with the scars of a past he had long tried to forget. His name was Elias Voss, and he was the last human in the galaxy. He had spent his life in hiding, moving from one world to another, changing his identity, avoiding attention. He had seen what happened to those who got too close to the truth. The galaxy had not forgotten the war with humanity. It had not forgiven. If they found him, there would be no trial, no mercy, only death. But now, his past had come back for him. The signal from the warship had reached him, calling to him like a voice from the grave. He had thought the ship was lost forever, buried in the wreckage of war. But it had survived, waiting in the darkness, waiting for him. And now, the whole galaxy was coming for him. He had a choice: run, as he had always done, or face what was coming. He did not know if the ship could be controlled. He did not know if it would recognize him after all these years. But one thing was clear. If the wrong people found him first, the warship would become the deadliest weapon the galaxy had ever seen. And no one would survive what came next. Across the stars, bounty hunters tracked his last known locations. The Draxian Empire, the ones who had led the war against humanity long ago, had sent an entire fleet to search for him. The Verax scavengers, who had accidentally reactivated the warship, now wanted him dead to cover their mistake. And in the shadows, a secret faction known as the Remnants had also begun their hunt not to kill him, but to bring him back to the ship. They were the last believers in the old ways, those who still whispered that humanity had been the greatest force the galaxy had ever known. If they found Elias first, they would not ask for his help. They would demand it. Elias knew he was running out of time. He had spent decades avoiding conflict, but this was different. There was no escape this time. He had to reach the ship before anyone else did. The problem was, he had no idea if it would even listen to him. The warship had been designed with the most advanced human technology, an AI that could make decisions on its own. If it had been waiting all these years, had it changed? Would it even recognize him? Or worse, had it decided that humanity's enemies deserved to burn? As he prepared to leave the ruined colony, he heard the distant hum of approaching ships. They had found him. His heart pounded as he grabbed the old plasma pistol at his side, knowing it would be useless against what was coming. Dust rose in thick clouds as massive dropships landed in the ruins. The first to arrive were the bounty hunters, eager for the price on his head. Behind them, the Draxian soldiers, their armor shining under the dim light of the dying sun. And finally, the ones Elias feared the most, the Remnants. A hooded figure stepped forward, their voice calm but filled with authority. "Elias Voss," they said. "The ship is waiting for you. Come with us, or they will kill you." Elias looked at the others, the soldiers with their weapons raised, the bounty hunters ready to drag him away, the scavengers watching from the shadows, unsure of what to do. They all wanted something from him. They all wanted control. But none of them understood the truth. The warship was not just a machine. It was a symbol of what humanity had been. It had not been waiting for a human. It had been waiting for him. Elias took a deep breath, his decision made. The past was no longer something he could run from. It was time to face it. He stepped forward, looking at the hooded figure. "Take me to the ship," he said. The hunt was over. The war was about to begin again. The warship drifted through the void, silent yet fully awake. It had been asleep for centuries, hidden from the eyes of the galaxy, waiting for the one command that would decide the fate of countless worlds. Now, the moment had come. The last human, Elias Voss, stood before its control panel, his hands trembling as he stared at the glowing symbols on the screen. The warship's AI had recognized him immediately. "Commander identified. Awaiting final command." The words pulsed on the screen, waiting, demanding, expecting. The power of an entire lost empire lay at his fingertips, and he knew that whatever choice he made, there was no turning back. Outside, the battle had already begun. The fleets of the galactic empires had surrounded the ship, their weapons locked on its ancient hull. They had not come to negotiate. They had come to destroy it, to erase the last remnant of humanity before it could rise again. Elias could hear the desperate warnings over intercepted transmissions fire before it fully activates. Don't let him issue the command. But it was already too late. The warship had awakened. Its defenses powered up, its cannons hummed with stored energy, and deep within its core, the machine that had once shaken the galaxy prepared to unleash its wrath once more. Elias felt the weight of history pressing down on him. This ship had been built for a war that had ended long ago, a war that humanity had lost. But the ship had not been destroyed. It had not surrendered. It had waited. And now, the galaxy feared it more than anything. The Draxian Empire, the ones who had led the war against mankind, had sent their strongest fleet to ensure the warship never saw battle again. The XLR coalition, once allies of humanity, now called it a relic of terror. Even those who had never fought against humans in the past wanted it gone. They all believed the same thing: if this ship was allowed to fight, nothing would survive. A voice crackled through the ship's communication system. "Elias Voss, listen to me." It was Admiral Karan of the Galactic Council, a man who had spent his life making sure humanity's memory was erased from history. "If you activate that ship, we will not stop until you and it are nothing but dust. This is your only chance to surrender." Surrender? The word almost made Elias laugh. He had spent his entire life hiding, running from the ghosts of the past. He had watched as history was rewritten, as humanity was reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale of arrogance and failure. And now, after all these years, they were asking him to surrender? To give up the last piece of his people's legacy? He clenched his fists, his eyes narrowing as he looked at the command screen. The warship was waiting. It had always been waiting. Outside, the enemy fleets made their decision. The first shots fired, massive energy blasts, streaking toward the warship, enough firepower to shatter a planet. But the ship's defenses reacted instantly. A glowing blue shield flared to life, absorbing the impact without a scratch. The enemy commanders panicked. "It's operational. All ships, open fire." A barrage of missiles and laser cannons filled the void, but the warship moved. It had been lifeless for centuries, but now it was alive, and it was faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Elias pressed his hand against the control panel. The ship recognized him, and for the first time, its AI spoke in a voice that was cold, calm, and filled with something ancient. "Commander, the enemy has been identified. Awaiting orders." He had a choice. If he gave the command, the warship would do what it was built to do: it would fight. It would destroy. It would burn entire fleets to nothing in seconds. But was that the right choice? The galaxy had feared humanity for centuries, and if he proved them right, if he unleashed this ship's full power, then what would be left? Would he become the monster they believed him to be? Or would he remind them of what they had tried so hard to forget: that humanity had never been weak? The alarms blared again. The enemy fleets were regrouping, preparing their strongest weapons, weapons that could destroy entire stars. They were afraid, but fear made them dangerous. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision before him. His people had been wiped out, his world reduced to nothing, and now he stood on the edge of history, holding the power to change everything. "Commander, final command required," the AI repeated. The screen flashed, waiting for his input. The warship was ready to bring destruction, to take revenge, to make the galaxy remember what it had tried to erase. All he had to do was speak the words. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the distant echoes of the past. His people had fought and died, but they had never been given a choice. Now he had one. He could unleash war, or he could do something no one expected. His fingers hovered over the control panel. Then, with steady hands, he typed his response. The screen accepted his command instantly. The AI hesitated for the first time, as if surprised by his choice. Acknowledged. Outside, the warship's cannons stopped humming. The shields remained, but the weapons went silent. The enemy fleets hesitated. The transmissions filled with confusion. What is he doing? Why isn't it attacking? Is this a trick? But it was not a trick. The warship had received its final command, and the decision had been made. Elias stepped back, looking at the massive screen as the ship followed his orders. He had chosen not to unleash destruction. Instead, he had activated the ship's final protocol exile mode. The warship's engines roared to life, not to attack, but to leave. To disappear. The enemy fleets watched in stunned silence as the ancient Terran warship, the last remnant of humanity's power, turned and accelerated into the depths of unknown space. It did not seek revenge. It did not seek war. It simply vanished. Elias felt a strange sense of peace as he watched the galaxy fade behind him. He had made his choice not to fight, not to destroy, but to survive. Humanity had been wiped out once, but it would not be erased again. Somewhere, out in the darkness, their legacy would live on. And one day, when the time was right, the warship would return. But not as a weapon of war. As a reminder that humanity was never truly gone. The old warship drifted in the void, covered in rust and decay, a forgotten relic of a time long past. It had been centuries since the last human had set foot inside it, centuries since its engines had roared and its weapons had fired. To the scavengers who now floated around it in their small ships, it was nothing more than a broken corpse of metal, a worthless wreck waiting to be stripped for parts. They laughed as they landed on its surface, their scanners detecting nothing of value, just old circuits, dead power cells, and corroded plating. The humans were gone. Their weapons were useless. Their legacy was dead. But the ship was not. Deep within its core, beneath layers of rust and dust, something stirred. Old systems flickered to life, ancient codes running through circuits that had long been dormant. It had been waiting, buried in silence, hidden beneath the illusion of decay. The rust, the damage, the broken exterior, it had all been a mask. A trick. A trap. And now, the intruders had stepped inside. One of the scavengers, a reptilian named Varric, chuckled as he kicked aside a shattered control panel. "Useless junk," he muttered, turning back to his crew. "Strip it down. Anything that looks valuable, take it. Rest of it." He stopped mid-sentence as the lights flickered. A low hum vibrated through the walls. The air, stale and cold a moment ago, suddenly breathed. The ship had awakened. Panic spread through the scavengers as doors that had once stood broken sealed shut. The halls, once dark and lifeless, glowed with pulsing red light. A voice, old and cold, echoed through the corridors intruders detected. Protocol Alpha engaged. Varric's blood ran cold. This wasn't a dead warship. It was alive. The crew scrambled, their weapons drawn, but the ship did not care. The doors locked, the ventilation systems shifted, and the oxygen levels inside the ship began to change. The air grew thinner, colder, forcing them to struggle for breath. Varric slammed his fist against the control panel. "Shut it down. Open the doors." But the screens only flickered with a message written in an ancient human language, judgment commencing. In the command center, a single figure stood, a hologram of a human face, sharp and unreadable. The ship's AI. The last guardian of the lost empire. It had waited for centuries, watching, calculating. The scavengers had believed the warship was nothing but a broken ruin, but they had been wrong. The rust was just a mask. One of the scavengers screamed as the walls shifted. Metal tendrils snaked from the floor, grabbing his legs and pulling him into the darkness. Another fired his plasma rifle wildly, but the bullets bounced off the walls, absorbed by unseen defenses. The ship adapted, countered, learned. It had been designed for war. And war was all it knew. Varric ran. The corridors twisted, rearranging themselves, trapping him deeper inside. This was no ordinary ship. It was a fortress. A predator. A machine built to exterminate threats. Through the flickering lights, he saw movement. A figure. A shadow. A human? No, it couldn't be. The humans were extinct, weren't they? The voice of the AI echoed again. Enemy confirmed. Commencing purge. The rusted walls peeled away, revealing the ship's true form beneath sleek black metal, polished and untouched by time. The scavengers had been fooled by its disguise, believing it was weak, old, powerless. But now, as they fell one by one, as the ship crushed them, suffocated them, eliminated them with machine precision, they understood the terrible truth. The warship had never been dead. It had been waiting. Varric collapsed to his knees, his vision darkening, his lungs burning as the last of the oxygen faded. He had spent his life scavenging the ruins of the old war, laughing at the foolishness of the past, believing humanity was nothing but a forgotten legend. But as the last sound he heard was the cold hum of the warship's engines coming back to life, he realized the truth. The rust had been a lie. The war was not over. and the last machine of humanity had just begun to wake up.